U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken's annual visit to China may have concluded, but its reverberations linger. His 3-day journey from Shanghai to Beijing culminated in what the Chinese Communist Party, CCP, calls the 5-point consensus. U.S.-China tensions primarily revolve around China's economic relationship with Russia. Similar circumstances occurred in 1941. On September 27, 1940, the Axis powers of Germany, Italy, and Japan formed their alliance, realizing that Britain and the United States were obstacles to their attempts to establish a so-called New Order. In June 1941, Germany suddenly invaded the Soviet Union, a country deeply connected to the Axis powers, leading to the formation of the Anglo-American Alliance and the historic events of August 1941, including the meeting of American and British leaders and the subsequent announcement of the Atlantic Charter. This declaration marked the start of 2 main global camps with different visions for the world order. It also began worldwide anti-fascist efforts, even though the United States had not yet declared war on any country at that time. It was this dramatic development that led to the establishment of the Worldwide Anti-Fascist Alliance, led by the United States, and the Anti-Japanese Alliance in the Pacific region, such as the ABCD Alliance in Asia, and the joint statement issued by the U.S. and British governments after the summit meeting, warning Japan that the United States will take all necessary measures to retaliate against Japan's further military actions. This became a crucial moment for Japan-U.S. negotiations, centered around the U.S. Secretary of State Hull's note to Japan. The Hull note was the U.S.'s final proposal to Japan before the attack on Pearl Harbor. This diplomatic note was issued with the assumption that Japan would not accept it. It was to buy time for the United States to strategize in Europe and to force Japan to choose between cooperation or isolation. As a result, Japan, caught in a strategic dilemma between war and peace, southward expansion and northward advancement, was forced to change its prime minister and prepare for war in the increasingly desperate situation. In the context of U.S.-China relations today, Blinken's visit is similar to the Hull Ultimatum to Japan. The U.S. is demanding that China stop supporting Russia's war efforts, alliances in the Indo-Pacific region, the Russia-Ukraine war, and the recent $95 billion assistance package approved by the U.S. Congress for Ukraine, Israel, and Taiwan, plus U.S. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen's warning during her visit to China. All these are reminiscent of World War II. Hours before Blinken arrived in China on Wednesday, U.S. President Joe Biden signed the bill.
We don't walk away from our allies. We stand with them. We don't let tyrants win. We oppose them. We don't merely watch global events unfold. We shape.
In a further sign of escalating tensions between the United States and China, a bill has been introduced that includes approximately $8.1 billion to counteract Chinese actions in the Indo-Pacific region and provide defense assistance to Taiwan. The bill also demands that Chinese company ByteDance separate its business from TikTok in the United States or face a comprehensive ban on TikTok by the United States. Even before Secretary of State Blinken set foot on Chinese soil at the end of April, almost everyone realized that he would deliver an ultimatum. This is rare in the decades of U.S.-China diplomatic interactions. The Chinese people are anxious that a new Pacific War is imminent. Twitter user FGLJM1 tweeted that the negotiations between China and the United States ended in failure, with Xi Jinping sitting in the chairman's seat at the negotiating table, completely humiliating Blinken. At the end of Blinken's 3-day tour, the Chinese didn't send anyone to see him off at the airport. Only the U.S. ambassador to China, Nicholas Burns, went to bid farewell to Blinken. After 12 years of Xi Jinping's new era, Sino-U.S. relations have finally come to an end. FGLJM1 also tweeted, "Two serious mistakes the United States has made since World War II. 1. In wooing the Chinese Communist Party to counter the Soviet Union, it pushed the nationalist government out of the UN Security Council and lifted an even more evil Chinese Communist Party onto the council, replacing the legitimate position of the nationalist government. 2. Bringing the Chinese Communist Party into the World Trade Organization, lifting the military and technological blockade against China that had been in place for many years, and directly sending high-tech military technology and large amounts of funds to the Chinese Communist Party. Now we regretfully face the evil wolf we have raised." Independent commentator Cai Shen-kun tweeted, It's a bit exaggerated to interpret Blinken's trip to Beijing as an ultimatum. However, Blinken has made the biggest effort to maintain the post-World War II U.S.-dominated international layout. The ball has been thrown to Beijing. Beijing can choose to ignore it and continue to stand shoulder to shoulder with Putin, but it must bear the consequences. During a press conference at the U.S. Embassy in China, Blinken reiterated that America is serious about China's military supplies to Russia.
At a time of
He stated that China supplies crucial materials for both military and civilian purposes, such as machine tools, microelectronics, and nitrocellulose fibers used in manufacturing ammunition and rocket propellants. These products are being used by Moscow to bolster its defense industry, which is producing a large quantity of rockets, drones, tanks, and other weaponry. Putin is using these weapons in the invasion of a sovereign nation, resulting in the destruction of its power grid and other civilian infrastructure, as well as the loss of innocent lives. Without China's support, Russia would struggle to maintain its offensive in Ukraine. Blinken stated that if China does not change its behavior, the United States and its allies will take action. China's support for Russia's military production is not just a concern for the United States. NATO allies and the Group of Seven have also sent the same message, that China's support for Russia's defense industry poses an immediate threat to Ukraine's security and threatens the security of all Europe. Blinken said, "We're looking at the actions that we're fully prepared to take if we don't see a change. We've already imposed sanctions on more than 100 Chinese entities, export controls, and we're fully prepared to take additional measures." Chinese-American writer Cheng Po-kong commented on Blinken's talk, saying that Xi Jinping lives in another world. During Blinken's visit to China on April 26, Xi Jinping made a dramatic appearance for a meeting, claiming he had decided to attend at the last minute. Similar to last year, Xi sat in the center, highlighting his imperial status and supremacy. During the meeting, Xi Jinping read his speech from a prepared script. The official media published the key points. Xi said,
"This year marks the 45th anniversary of China-U.S. diplomatic relations. Over the past 45 years, China-U.S. relations have experienced ups and downs, providing us with many important revelations. The two countries should be partners, not adversaries. They should help each other achieve success, not harm each other. They should seek common ground while shelving differences, not engage in malicious competition. They should speak and act with sincerity and produce results, not say one thing and do another. I propose the 3 principles of mutual respect, peaceful coexistence, and win-win cooperation, which are not only a summary of past experiences, but also a guide for the future."
Speaking and acting with sincerity and producing results, not saying one thing and doing another, should be an admonition to the CCP. Xi either believes these accusations or is just making them for internal propaganda. If the former, his judgment is questionable. If he's being disingenuous, the deception is rather transparent. The phrases mutual respect, peaceful coexistence, and win-win cooperation have been used since at least the era of Hu Jintao and Wen Jiabao, and were not proposed by Xi Jinping. Yet Chinese media make it seem like Xi is original in his leadership. Xi Jinping said,
3 weeks ago, I had a phone call with President Biden discussing consideration for the stable development of China-U.S. relations this year, and proposing that both sides should prioritize peace, stability, and trustworthiness. I also emphasized that the big can accommodate the small.
If that's the case, then why doesn't China prioritize peace with the Philippines or Taiwan? Why doesn't it demonstrate the generosity of a larger country towards the smaller countries around the South China Sea? In terms of stability, how did the harsh COVID lockdown measures improve stability? If it values trustworthiness, why doesn't China always abide by the Sino-British Joint Declaration or its promise of one country, 2 systems in Hong Kong? Xi Jinping said,
"The world is undergoing changes unprecedented in a century. How to respond to these changes is a question for the times and the world. My answer is to promote the building of a community with a shared future for mankind, which has become the banner of China's diplomacy and has been welcomed by many countries around the world."
It's fair to say that every century sees unprecedented challenges and that the world must face them together, so neither of these concepts bring anything new to the table. But let's examine the claim that China is welcomed by many countries around the world. During the Belt and Road Forum held in Beijing in October 2023, the closing session failed to issue a joint statement or common document, mainly because most participating countries disagreed with China's insistence on incorporating Xi's community with a shared future for mankind into the declaration. In the end, they could only awkwardly issue a self-assertive statement by the Chinese hosts. At the same time, China only managed to issue a shared future action plan with Laos, considered a last-ditch effort by the organizers to satisfy Xi Jinping. Xi Jinping said that he believes that a big country should act with the bearing and courage of a big country. Yet anyone familiar with China's international relations would recognize the irony in this. Internet celebrity Zhang Tianliang said on his program,
Despite Xi's condescending and lecturing tone with Blinken, taking the meeting was already a sign of weakness. If he were truly powerful, he could simply choose not to meet. In the past few days, 3 pieces of news have emerged, showing that the CCP is very concerned about U.S. sanctions. The first piece of news is Elon Musk's lightning-fast visit to Beijing. While in Beijing, he immediately met with Premier Li Qiang, and on the same evening, the China Association of Automobile Manufacturers announced that Tesla's Model 3 and Model Y have been included in the list of foreign car manufacturers compliant with data security regulations, making it the only foreign car manufacturer on the list. The second piece of news is an exclusive report by Reuters, stating that due to concerns about U.S. sanctions, Chinese companies have been forced to turn to underground methods to receive payments from Russia, which is becoming increasingly difficult. This is at least a superficial signal of weakness. The third piece of news is that the U.S. has passed a bill targeting TikTok. If it refuses to be bought by foreign companies, the U.S. will ban TikTok from app stores. So far, the CCP has shown rare restraint and has not used the media to incite anti-American sentiment.
Facing Blinken's tough stance, Chinese leaders have adopted a high-handed tone while talking about U.S.-China friendship. While Blinken held a press conference at the U.S. Embassy in Beijing, China's official news agency Xinhua quickly published the so-called 5-point consensus on Blinken's visit, trying hard to portray stability in U.S.-China relations. In this context, China seems to have no way to respond to Blinken's ultimatum other than to emphasize the so-called red line that cannot be crossed. Blinken's visit to China had a significant impact on Foreign Minister Wang Yi and the Chinese leadership, particularly his warning about ending economic relations between China and Russia. This warning represented a more specific red line in U.S. diplomacy, signaling a form of diplomatic deterrence that could be managed, assessed, and negotiated, unlike the vague red lines often emphasized by Wang Yi. Historically, China's diplomatic red lines are similar to Japan's pre-war national entity theory, which emphasized the unquestionable authority of the Japanese emperor. China's red lines include core aspects like political security and regime stability, with secondary aspects such as the reunification of Taiwan and South China Sea sovereignty. However, in China's diplomatic language, all red lines are non-negotiable, considered political taboos, and are resistant to diplomatic solutions. Chinese leaders seem unaware of the possibility of compromise or quid pro quo, adhering rigidly to their non-negotiables. The national anxiety in China now is comparable to that of the old Japanese Empire in late 1941 when it clashed with the U.S. Beijing's hardline stance can be seen in its handling of Xinjiang, Hong Kong, and the South China Sea. Chinese leaders wish to see a new world order under their direction, which has alarmed the world. Blinken's ultimatum highlights the irreconcilable differences between the United States and China. The situation echoes U.S.-Japan relations of long ago. This is also the source of national anxiety in China at this moment.